Home Depot paint mixers of Reddit. What is the weirdest thing you've had to color match? I worked at a store called Cloverdale Paint. I matched Sharpies, microscopic flecks of paint people scraped off their walls, a woman's teal underwear, and more. Maybe the weirdest one was matching a guy's girlfriend's iris color. He wanted to paint something the color of her eyes, so he brought in a close-up photo of her. It was difficult because an iris isn't just one solid color, but it was fun and he left happy with this kind of smoky blue. Not Home Depot, but had someone bring a chocolate milkshake into our store wanting paint matched to it. My other favorite story is a couple who bought Ben Hogan's house in Westover Hills in Fort Worth. They brought in a sample of something that was oil-based paint and had nicotine stains. We tried to explain to them that it used to be white or off-white, but the yellowing of the paint and the nicotine had turned it to this snot yellow color. They didn't care. They wanted the color Ben Hogan had been living with, just freshened up. Worked at Walmart about 18 years ago and had to occasionally run the paint area. Wife and husband brought in a 4-foot by 4-foot piece of wall that they painted. They wanted me to match it. The wife then pulls a paint splotch from her purse, and says something like, "This is the paint we used from Home Depot." Some people are just born to entertain. I worked at Lowe's, but someone once wanted the blue color of the sign hanging above the paint area. There was no way I could get the sign down to put it in the scanner. I picked a paint swatch that I thought came the closest and he agreed to it. Older lady comes in with a Ziploc bag full of dirt. I figure she wants us to test its pH or something. Nope. She has a walkway, and when it rains some of the dirt from her flower bed runs onto the walkway. She wants to paint the walkway the same color as the dirt so it isn't as noticeable. I try to talk her into using landscape ties or something to prevent the dirt from getting onto the concrete in the first place. Nope, just wants to paint it. Okay, so I asked her if she wanted the paint to match the color of the dirt when it was wet or dry. Blew her mind. I don't work at the Despot, but I am a certified paint expert, according to the hardware store I do work at. The weirdest thing I had to color match was a carousel horse. Well, actually the leg of a carousel horse because that was the smallest part the customer could bring with them. I used the X-Rite Color Designer Plus system with their spectrophotometer, along with 10 years of experience, and I'm happy to say I was able to hit it dead on. Don't work with paint at all, but one day I got home and parked next to me was a light green Thunderbird. I said to my wife at the time, "That color looks like it came off an Avon bottle. Skin so soft to be specific." About a month later the car was back and I noticed a license plate on the front with a web address, so I looked up the site and emailed the owner. Turns out he was visiting the guy downstairs from me. They were in a band together, so I went down to talk to him. I asked him about the car and mentioned my comment to my wife and he laughed. Turns out the car was originally his mother's car. She had bought it brand new from the factory just to get that color. She had sent them a Skin So Soft bottle so they could make sure they got it right. Pepto-Bismol. About 10 years ago I was working at Walmart in high school. This lady once came in and said she has a color in mind but can't find anything similar. So she describes it and I guess how to make close to it. It comes out and she wants me to add a little more pink to it, so I do it and mix again. This went on for near an hour, but then I finally got it right. It was a great shift. I used to work at a Home Depot a few years ago. I mostly worked in the lumber department but worked in the paint department for my last month or so. Someone brought me a pair of shoes to color match, and they bought several gallons of the paint for a large room, so they must have really loved those shoes. If curious, it was just a regular pair of shoes. I'm not sure what the significance to them was as I didn't ask. Another one. Customer came in with a whole cantaloupe, cut it in half on the counter and told me to give him a perfect match on the fresh melon. I was never a paint mixer, but I worked for a company that would design and print signage for trade shows. A customer needed the red in their artwork to print the same as the color of their building. They found a loose brick from their building and mailed it to us. Somebody brought in a bar of soap for me to match. I think it was Irish Spring. Tostitos spinach dip. It was odd enough and with a good reward that I haven't forgotten it. A long time ago I worked for one of Home Depot's competitors and someone came in to ask if I'd be able to match the spinach dip that Tostitos was about to roll out. He wanted undercooked. perfectly cooked, and overcooked matched so that they could paint the inside of jars to show the manufacturing teams what each looked like as it all was made. The guy showed me a jar of the dip and we talked about how he'd have to remove all the spinach and red stuff, bell peppers, tomatoes, chunks and have just the actual dip. He left but came in a few days later with just the dips smeared and dried on some little cards or something. Then I spent a couple of hours working with him to get the colors right. In the end he was happy. A day after that he came in just to bring me a couple of bags full of Lay's, Tostitos parent company, and Tostitos with multiple jars of dips, including the not yet released spinach dip. He told me to share it all, but I was in my mid-20s working full-time and trying to finish my second college run at the time, so that free food was a godsend. I put those bags in my car instead of the break room and took it all home. Spent more than a decade working at a paint store and by far the weirdest thing I had to match was the toe beans of the customer's cat. At first I just grabbed a fanbook of colors and was showing her what was in the ballpark. At this point she was holding her cat, and it was content enough in its owner's arms. This customer wanted a precise match using the color spectrometer though, and handed the cat over to me. The feline was not happy. At the very least it wasn't trying to squirm out of my arms, but it was giving me quite a stink eye and was growling the whole time I was holding it up to the sensor. TLDR eye color matched a very unhappy cat's paw. I've actually had a customer tell me she had a color in her mind. Worked at Dulux for a couple of years. It's going to be a long day. Asterisk pulls out all the color decks for all the competition. The worst is trying to explain to a designer that matching something from a CYMK swatch deck is impossible. It was an Ace Hardware, but I knew how to do paint mixing. A guy came in and wanted a color match. I walked him over to the mixing counter and he handed me a broken off piece of wood, one of the paint stirrers you get anywhere, with a splash around the broken edge just after the handle. Some purpley lavender color. I'm just on autopilot and ask, okay, this color? He stares for 2 full seconds, not at me, at the wood, and says, yeah. In a heavy tone, like it was the color of his dead wife's eyes or something. We stood in silence as I did the scan, mixed the pigments, and watched the shaker machine. I'm not a paint mixer, but my dad was, and he told me the weirdest thing he had to match was a half-eaten apple, the inside. Had a woman come in last summer wanting some deck stain color matched. I told her I needed a physical sample of the color on something to match it, and she explained that she didn't feel like going to her car to grab the can. She then plopped her foot on the desk and asked me to color match a part of her foot that had gotten stain on it and spent a solid 2 minutes trying to convince me to put her foot under the color match machine, all while leaving her foot on the desk. In all honesty, I probably could have done it but decided I didn't get paid enough for that shit and refused until she left. Formerly Lowe's, but I had to try to match a pillow once. It always came out light because the elastic in the fabric showed too much. The worst color match I ever had was a lady who wanted a color from the catalog, but didn't realize the catalog was printed on shitty paper. She came in the next day furious that it didn't match, even though it was the correct color via the color code. I had to color match our own damn catalog. It was stupid. It wasn't a color match exactly, we just had to mix a very bright pink. It was afterward that the mom of this little girl pulled out a container of glitter and said, "Will this be able to be mixed in with it too?" So we ended up just kind of saying fuck it and mixing a big container of glitter into a gallon of paint. I'm not sure if it ever worked, kind of doubt it did, but the little girl was super excited about her glitter paint. My wife worked at Lowe's and had a lady come in asking for the color of the sky. My wife told her to look at the samples and pick a color and she'd mix it up. The lady said, "No, I want the actual color of the sky," like she wanted her wall to look like the inside of a Vegas casino. My wife, seeing this lady is going to be a problem, asks her, "What time of day do you want?" "If it's nighttime, I've got black." Now the lady is getting upset that she can't just buy 1 can of paint to make her wall look exactly like the sky. My wife finished the conversation with, "Bring in a sample and I'll see what I can do." Lady then proceeded to ask for the manager. It's a tie between the large jar of ghee, clarified butter, and someone's skin. I got both of those within a week of each other. The skin thing was because a woman came in looking for a paint color that would match her skin, so I thought, fuck it, let's match her arm and see what happens. She loved it so much she ordered it for her whole house. I named that color, Susan's Arm. Edit. I forgot a couple of other weird ones. Scotch masking tape blue. Was really happy with how that one turned out, multiple ottomans, a reading chair, dog fur, an egg, a painter's shirt and a painter's jeans. Asterisk whenever people ask me this question I'll respond with, let me tell you about the Skin Woman, which is probably the worst out of context sentence you could hear out of a Home Depot employee. I don't work at HD anymore, but a few years ago I had a woman come in to get a diaper color matched. She wanted the blue banding at the top's color because she loved the shade so much. That was a pretty odd one. Not Home Depot but a different hardware chain. Weirdest thing someone tried to have me match was a full-size picnic table that was asterisk stained translucent. Asterisk. A. I can't bring the scanner outside as it's connected to the computer. B. You can't reliably color match translucent stain. Sometimes people baffle me. Worked at Menards for a bit in college. One day a lady came in asking to match the color of her bathtub. Like, she wanted to repaint her bathtub. Had to politely tell her that that's not how bathtubs work. There isn't a paint that we sold that would survive being fully submerged in hot water for large periods of time while someone steps, lays on it. I still think about that sometimes when I'm in that store. Not a hardware store worker, but I paint miniatures as a hobby. I once took a picture of my neighbor's neglected pool because it was a lovely shade of green and wanted to paint some plague marines that color. For those interested, the closest match I found was a paint called Warboss Green by Citadel. I worked at a paint store for years and didn't get anything too weird to match. The only thing that stands out was this guy that would come in to match mini farm tractor collectible models. He wanted the paint to match exactly and it would take hours for him to decide on a color. This was a car paint store so sometimes we'd have to help people find their paint codes. Some models have codes in the trunk underneath the spare tire cover. We'd go out to the car and the trunk would be absolutely full of junk. So you stand there while the customer begins to sweat as they try to push all of their embarrassing items out of the way, including dildos on at least one occasion. I had a toy gargoyle from the show Gargoyles. My mom saw me playing with it, took the wing off, took the wing to Home Depot to paint match, and painted our front door gargoyle. I've been working at a local small paint store for about a year and a half and when I started I didn't realize how busy I was going to be. When we color matching we use a fancy decide called a photospectrometer, which shoots light at it and reads the light bounced back into it, then it gives us the formula so we can match the color into the product the customer wants. We mix the paint then check it against the target material before revising if needed. The machine is so accurate we rarely need to revise, or sending it out to the customer. In order for us to do this process we need a flat, solid piece of material the size of a coin to put into our machine. The weirdest match I ever had was a cut of shag carpet with several different gray tones. We had this carpet-wielding Neanderthal walk in during a really busy week and say they needed 30 gallons matched that day. He was a typical, hurry I'm busy, kind of mouth-breathing, dip-chewing man-ape who smelt more like piss than he did cigarettes. He was doing the rec cafe area for some big office building and had to do the walls and exposed support beams. We told them we couldn't get it exact and they flipped out, saying that they needed it exact. No matter how many times we pointed out that there are different hues to the carpet he kept saying, just get the color. So my boss took over and made the most popular gray we sell into the most expensive paint he could and we sent him on his way. Seen him come in a few more times after that, but now I assume his boss let him go because customers have made purchases under the same contractor's account that Gray Carpet Man used that day and I haven't seen Gray Carpet Man in months. Worked in paint at Walmart. This person took a picture of their wall and had me color match it. It didn't work and they left me with their phone for like 15 minutes. Once, my best friend's older brother came in when I was working the paint counter. He says, my finger. I want a paint color that's the exact color of my finger right now. I was new and very confused. I reached out to grab his finger and scan it and he pulls it away and goes, I'm joking dude. Thank God. 9/10 prank though. Not for a costumer, but me and my coworker tried to color match our hands to see what it would suggest. It wasn't even close. Lol, the strangest thing was a side mirror from a car. This lady came in with it asking us to color match it so she could paint her scratches. Needless to say, the color matcher uses light reflection to pick up colors so it wouldn't work. I told her the best thing she should do is find a spray paint that's closest to the car color and then cover it with car enamel spray. Worked out for her, but I still couldn't fight the thought that this lady really was about to roll on paint on her fucking car. My manager color matched a cat once. Mostly people just try to have you match splinters or things that have multiple color tones into just a general vibe. I'm a tattoo artist, but I matched a skin tone to cover white spots on a black gentleman's hand. Not weird and not hard for me to do, but he was blown away after telling me how long he had the spots and how fast I made them disappear. I mixed dark brown with a hint of olive. Well, I don't work at Home Depot, but I work at a automotive paint jobber. I had a black gentleman come in about 6 months ago. He's been a customer of mine for years. He informed me he needed me to match something in his car. This isn't uncommon. We go outside to scan, look at colors daily. When I get out there, he opens the back door and grabs a prosthetic leg. The problem is they sent it to him to wear, but it was for a white person. He said he couldn't be walking around in shorts with a white leg, lol. So he hands me one of his older black legs and asks me to match it best I can. It didn't take long and he was happy with the color. I just picked a brown out of the book and tinted on it till it looked close enough to what he had before. Not Home Depot, but we had a customer come in with a statue of the baby Jesus from her church's nativity scene. The paint was chipped and she said the price to replace the statue was too high, so she asked us to see if we could match it. The woman working the paint desk with me said she'd give it a try. She succeeded. That's right, she color matched the baby Jesus. Worked as a paint mixer at Home Depot for approximately 3 years. Some of the things I've color matched: a leaf, a rock, a few shirts. A painter had color spilled on his hand but didn't have the color. Someone brought in an entire door, termite-infested wood. Not weird but made a huge mess. Some grass, for an outdoor deck. Oh, now that's long ago. I used to be very good at manually matching colors. No machines in those days. There was the standard bits of paper and cloth. One day someone walks in covered in dried paint, and asks me to match the color on their arm. Someone has spilled the paint all over him and they needed more, but had lost the color identification code somehow. He stood around patiently for an hour until I sorted out an exact match. Thanks for watching. See you later.